So I'm going to act. I'm going to act fast. I've met with Republicans. There's some really fine people who want to get something done, but they're just not willing to go as far as I think we have to go.
That the president today talking about the COVID relief package just hours after the Senate pulled an all-nighter with procedural votes to pave the way to get the thing done with pretty much zero Republican support. Now, the price tag is nearly $2 trillion. It includes everything on your screen and more. I want to bring in our first guest here, Congressman Mark DeSaulnier. He's a Democrat from Northern California. He serves on the Education Committee, by the way, which was one of the panels that Marjorie Taylor Greene was just booted from. We'll get to her in a moment, but let's start with the stimulus package, Congressman. You know, it's funny. If you get out of Washington, I don't even care if it's a Republican senator or a governor, excuse me, from a ruby red state. They all say, go big here. We're desperately in need of aid on the state level and at the school level. Does this go far enough?
Well, it's a big jump forward. Personally, I think we should go even further, but I think the president is right. And the sense of urgency, to your point, is missed very frequently in D.C. So people need help, and they need it now. And they need the assurance that they're not going to be caught between paying their bills and partisan debates in D.C.
What I don't get, Congressman, is for the last 4 years, whatever concerns of fiscal discipline went out the window from the pay-go portion of the GOP. Take all the morals out, just raw politics. Why would Republicans want to keep checks out of people's pockets right now and keep states from taking an axe to their budgets, cutting things like schools, cops, even medical care? How's that good politics?
Well, you sound like a therapist. You know, Congress has often done in its history not what was necessarily in the best interest of their constituents. Unfortunately, money plays a big part in this and how we raise money for campaigns, to be perfectly honest, and what members do after their careers sometimes. So, and then there's the ideological belief that if people with money make more money, that somehow it'll all trickle down to everybody else. But we know that's not true. So right now in a pandemic where most people are struggling, not because of anything they did, we need to provide the relief they need as quickly as possible.
Let's get to your colleague. It sounds bizarre saying that, but not on the Education Committee, Marjorie Taylor Greene. You know, I could take an hour going over, and as I have for the better part of this week, the insane things that she has said and the frankly dangerous things. But one of the things she said was that the forest fires that ravaged your state were caused by Jewish lasers from the sky. I'm not making this up. My point is, when you look around to colleagues in the California delegation, you know, and you looked at Darrell Issy and you say, wait a minute, you really think this woman deserves to get committee seats, you know, as an incoming freshman who, you know, barely even knows the state capitals? You really think she should be rewarded? Wouldn't privately he tell you, of course not, but what do you want me to do about it? I don't want to face a primary. Is that kind of the conversations, without even putting names to it, you're hearing in the cloakroom?
Yes. And some of it's just having friends on the other side of the aisle. I mean, 30 years ago when I first ran for the city council, I was a liberal Republican. I know young people don't think there was such a thing. And I left the party shortly thereafter as it got more and more conservative. You know, there are a lot of things at work here, the Koch brothers and the Heritage Foundation, purifying the Republican Party. So it's more complicated, but we've got to get back to what's in the best interest of all of our constituents. And as a liberal member, I need to listen and have empathy and understanding for conservative people. But this kind of language, you have to hold people accountable, especially it's less than a month since a lot of us lived through that disgraceful attack on the Capitol. We know that words make a difference. And she needs to be held accountable. And I'm very disappointed there weren't more Republicans, including friends who I have relationships with, who didn't stand up to principle and say, yeah, we can't have this kind of behavior.
And I'll stay in California. Congressman McCarthy seemed to have an aha moment the night of the riots when he said, you know, a lot of this lies at the foot of the president for his inflammatory rhetoric here. Enough. Now, I grant you, in a matter of just minutes, he then wouldn't still vote to certify the election. But he calls out this woman, and then 2 days later he's in Mar-a-Lago. I just think, and again, I can do this from a comfort of a TV studio, but he's overcomplicating the dynamic here. He's got a chance to take his party back. Again, staying in California to the party of Reagan, but he seems intent on making sure that Trump has a stranglehold on these, even in absentia.
Yeah. We've got followers and leaders mixed up in this country right now. People who scream a lot and intimidate people have taken over the country in many ways. And historians will try to figure this out. We've been through this before in this country. And unfortunately, a lot of the analogy is pre-Civil War and pre-Gilded Age. But we've got to get some people in the Republican Party who are, I listened to former Senator Danworth a few nights ago, and he was really great about, I'm a conservative, but I'm a principled conservative. And I'm a liberal, but I consider myself a principled liberal. Principles got to come first at moments like this. And that's when the government works better. So we've got to get back to that. And that party's got to get back to that. Or I really believe that there's no future for them. And it's not about demographics as much as it is about being principled.
And I believe, for whatever it's worth, we need two healthy political parties in this country. And even if I happen to align with you guys more than not, I don't want to see the Republican Party become a non-option for the electorate. But finally, Congressman, as I mentioned off the top, you're in the Education Committee. I just had a conversation with the head of the NEA, the biggest teachers union in the country. And I pressed a little bit because there's feelings and there's facts. And it seems, and this isn't a blanket statement across the country, you're better equipped than me to answer this, but there are districts that have invested a ton of money to make sure the classrooms are as safe as possible. Are they, virus proof? Of course not. But we got to get these kids into the classrooms. At what point here does the teacher unions have to, say, listen, you put in the filtration systems, you put in the testing, you put in the distancing and the masking requirements and all the rest, we're coming back into the room. I mean, at a certain point, the facts got to take hold, don't they?
They do. But this is a very dynamic situation. We're in a once every 100 years pandemic. We've learned a lot about it since it started less than a year ago. So I understand their concerns. I'm a very large supporter of the labor movement, but we've got to have that discussion about when is the risk acceptable. And we need to get these kids back to school. You're absolutely right. We know what they're learning. There's plenty of research available to us about what kids learn when they're not in school. From a behavioral health standpoint, from a retention standpoint. So we've got to make up that ground. And this is what makes the economy go, public education. So all of those things, but we got to keep focused here, I think. It's very easy to get in this trend of screaming at one another. I think we really need to be focused on what are the best practices, as you say, and how do we get them reopened as quickly as possible.
Hey, Congressman, I know you got a busy, probably forever in front of you with what we have in front of us as a country, but I appreciate you giving us a few minutes. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you asking me on. Thanks.
You got it.